Right? The two known objects to be seen from space. One is the Great Wall of China, man-made objects. The second one, which was a man-made object, was, now it's changed, but it was the landfill of Los Angeles. Earth can also replenish. You are getting food. So if you plant a seed again, it gives us food again. Right? You're taking out minerals, you regenerate some part of the minerals. You're taking out water, it regenerates water. Right? It has a capacity to regenerate. It's like a bank. Along with this, you go into inquiry and asking nature the right kind of questions on how nature can help you solve that particular problem. And nature can throw some amazing animals and organisms which is solving similar kind of problems.
A masterclass with the transformative concepts of biomimicry, a way of looking at nature. Now, as we move forward with our event, it is time to acknowledge and honor the brilliant minds that we have that have joined us today to share their invaluable insights and expertise.
Good evening, everyone. Great. So I think I'd like to just briefly introduce myself. I'm architect Chetan KS. I run a couple of firms. I run Kham Design, which is my architectural practice, and we've been working on various issues of space making, because Kham in Sanskrit means concepts of space. And we are a 26-year-old firm now, where we've done various projects focusing on how we can make impact on the planet as right as possible. I don't see that the moment we start building something, I see that we are not environmentally friendly, so we call ourselves an environmentally sensitive practice. Right? So that's something which we've been doing. And I've also been teaching in various schools of design across the country and having fun learning from young minds, young bloods. So it's always fun to really learn from young bloods and also share whatever is in my mind with all of them. And in due course of time, when I was guiding one of the students on his thesis way back, I think around 15 years ago, almost 16 years ago, I came across this word biomimicry. And it was the student's idea that he wanted to do a studio on, or a thesis on biomimicry. So it kind of made me think, what is biomimicry? Is there a word? It was a new word. For how many of you this is a new word? Biomimicry is a new word. Some of you, all of you have heard of biomimicry before? Excellent, awesome. So this was for me then something which was very new. And it took me into a journey of really exploring what biomimicry actually means. And work with a lot of naturalists in terms of understanding how nature works. And it kind of really pushed me on another journey into really understanding various ways nature solves everyday problems, right? So that's where it started, and then I set up something called the Humphrey Center of Design, which is my second entity, wherein we look at dialogues on various issues of design, and biomimicry is one major activity which we do that. And we've been doing workshops on biomimicry in various colleges, doing elective programs. At this moment, it's all about bringing awareness about why biomimicry is a very interesting field of study in the coming years. Right? In fact, I think in last year's top 10 occupations in future world, biomimicry is in fact mentioned as one of the most prominent career choices for people to come in. Because I know, you all know where we are leading ourselves towards in terms of the challenges. We'll discuss about them in the presentation, right? So it really pushed me hard to really understand, can I start learning from nature and integrating that into my practice, and also share this knowledge with as many people as possible. So right now it's all about building awareness. I would like to share this with as many students as possible, so that we have a lot of youngsters working on this kind of an idea. And in due course of time, we would like to really take up real-life problems which we are facing, not just in architecture, in design, in various industries itself, and then integrate that back into our practice. So, next slide. So, how many of you know about this? Anyone? Coral reefs? What does a coral reef do? Please. Let's make it a little interactive. Awesome. It's a carbon sink. What does it convert carbon into? It converts it into light. Right? It converts it into light. So this is a natural ecosystem, which is a carbon sink, which is one of the biggest challenges for the world right now. So it absorbs the carbon and makes it into light. Now we have another factory here. This factory is basically a cement factory. What does cement factory do? To generate lime, it burns and creates carbon. So it does the very opposite of what nature does for doing the same job. Right? So there was this company called Blue Planet, which really looked at how coral reefs work and started integrating that as a construction system for manufacturing lime and in due course cement. And not just that, they even built, I think, the San Francisco's Terminal 2 in that kind of a cement, wherein cement, instead of being carbon negative material, become a carbon positive material. And it started absorbing more carbon from the atmosphere and started generating a material which we generally leave carbon out. Okay, next slide. So, first question, why should we look at nature? Can I get some couple of answers? Why should we look at nature? What is it? Even though we are the most powerful organism on this planet right now.
Nature is actually an inspiration for design.
But why?
It is a mother of functionality.
Okay.
We can inspire that design and functionality both to adopt and create something.
Okay. But we have not done that. But why?
Trial and error.
Very cohesive with the system. The system is very cohesive with everything around it. Like, see honey bees in the white and colony. They have everything.
Excellent. Of how it becomes a part of an ecosystem, and it's not just two elements together working together, but it's a part of an ecosystem.
They're very intelligent as well. The system there. When we studied the honeycomb, we realized it is a very good shape. It's very stable shape.
It's a very
They
compact.
already know it.
Great. So I think we had somebody talking about
Everything starts from nature.
everything starts from nature. Then he said cyclical, it's a cyclical system. He said time. So let's look at one of the questions. If I put the whole evolution of the planet from the time Earth was formed to where we are today into a 12-hour clock, we are the most powerful organism on the planet right now. Right? When did we come on this planet? As Homo sapiens, when did we come on this planet? Huh? 1 minute before. Anyone else? I think only 1 minute before. Anybody else? I've had answers like 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Anybody else? Okay, let me give you a hint. Okay? What's the year today? 2025. 2025 years post Christ. Right? Because we look at the Christian calendar. So how many years before that do you think we have recorded history?
7,000.
Another 7,000. So how many years totally? 10,000 years. Let's assume that we take some more years before that. So human beings have approximately, I think, around 20 million years is what we have as a Homo sapiens, as somebody who evolved from the apes and become Homo sapiens. We have come in about 20 million years ago. But cognitive human beings, people who made things, who started doing things consciously, we've been here for the last 25 years. Right? So, next slide. So this is the image of the Homo sapiens. All of us were like this once upon Our previous births, if there's something about previous births. Right? Next one. So we came in around 3 seconds. So for the last 11 hours, 59 minutes, 57 seconds, we were not even part of this ecosystem. We become a part of this ecosystem for the last 3 seconds. If I can just ask you to close your eyes. Let me just close your eyes. 1, 2, 3. Done. That's all we have been in this 12-hour clock from the time we became humans from being apes. And we might be here for the next 3 seconds. But what have we created? What a mess we have created for ourselves. Right? So isn't it imperative that we go down? How many years old is the planet? Is the Earth? Any idea? We've said 20,000 years, 25,000 years for cognitive human beings, 20 million years for human beings. But when do you think, how many years has it taken for the Earth to evolve to where we are right now? From the Big Bang. 3.8 billion years. 3.8 billion years of evolution. And nature has been continuously looking at problem solving. Have you all heard of one great theory? Not theory. What was Charles Darwin's famous theory? What is this theory? Theory of evolution. Survival of the fittest. Is there something else to it? Theory of evolution. What does the theory say? Survival of the and is that those only 3 words, 4 words in the theory? We've only registered that much. It's survival of the fittest by natural selection. That means that evolution has happened by selecting what was right for that organism to develop further. Right? Say, for example, if all of us were like that prehistoric human being once upon a time, and we've all gone here, and I really envy you because you had lovely hair and I don't. Right? But we have evolved because of where we are, how we have changed every time a new offspring comes out. Right? A new offspring comes out and it has become better in certain aspects. So every time it's changing. Right? That's how nature has been continuously experimenting and changing and making it better for itself. Earlier it didn't know how to handle cellulose. And today we have fossil fuels because of that. Right? So, but where have we led this whole thing to? In this last, I would say 20,000 years of cognitive human beings, people who can think. Have any of you read the book Sapiens? You read the book Sapiens? So, what does it mean by cognitive human beings? And he makes one sentence somewhere. It's a very interesting sentence he makes. What's the name of the author?
Yuval Noah Harari.
Yuval
Noah Harari.
Yeah, Yuval Noah Harari. It's a lovely book, please do read. There's a 3-series book of his. He talks about the power which made human beings who we are today is because of the power of gossip. It's a very interesting word, gossip. Because what is gossip? Gossip is to talk about something which is not existing. Right? Like the neighbor's boy, girl running off, blah blah blah. You don't know it, but it happens. So Homo sapiens had this thinking process of visualizing something which is not existing and planning out for that and creating strategies to survive that occasion. And thereby they've changed and become somewhere where we are today. And that's also what has created the kind of products we use, the kind of materials we use on a daily basis. So let's see what Great Pacific Plastic Soup is. Anyone heard of the Great Pacific Plastic Soup before this? Great. So basically this is the Pacific Ocean, right? This is Japan and this is North America. We all know that the US is one of the greatest creators of waste. So a lot of this waste is being plonked onto the Pacific Ocean, put into the Pacific Ocean, because that's a but we don't want to see it on the land. It's okay to send it to the. So there are guards, West Pacific Guard and the East Pacific Guard. So when it keeps turning, it's like a mixing. It keeps turning, it solidifies the whole West. And today you have this whole area where you have plastic which is almost twice the size of the United States of America. There's not a single fish which is not to have a piece of plastic in the Pacific Ocean. There are various companies like Operation CNET which is working on cleaning up the Pacific Ocean, but it is something which we have continuously done. And when we started doing this, we started doing it immediately post World War II, which is hardly what? Less than a century. It's been less than a century since we started using products which cannot be compostable. The single-use lifestyle started off post World War II. And that is where we have created this kind of a situation. And this is the kind of planet we are all living in, our next generation. You can see this in cities, you can see it in every part, in a town, you can see it in the Ganges, you can see it in the Yamuna, you can see it in every river of the world. Right? This is where we are living our future generations. Next slide. This is a lovely slide which I came across by an artist called Chris Jordan. Chris Jordan, way back in 2011, created a series of installations which are environmentally sensitive, which gave us an idea of what it is. So I think some of you read this, but these are all cell phones. Right? Each one is a cell phone. So this is around 4,26,000 cell phones which gets retired in the US every day, way back in 2011. So just think of how much we multiply and how is our product designed. It is designed not to be recycled. It is designed so that we throw it and buy a new cell phone at the end of the day. Every material, we've also very well known to sandwich different materials together and create a new object. Right? Say for example, in a cell phone you have silver, you have silicon, you have metal, aluminum, you have gold, glass, plastic, everything. They're all sandwiched. So recycling that is a big challenge. That's what we are moving towards right now. Next slide. Lovely painting, but this painting is done by plastic covers. This painting is approximately 8 feet by 13 feet in dimension. Again in 2011, done in 2011. It depicts around 240,000 plastic bags equal to the estimated number of plastic bags consumed around the world every 10 seconds in 2011. When India was still moving, not so powerful in terms of using single-use plastics. We had, but it was not so much as what we have right now. Because now we have Swiggy, we have Zomato, we have Amazon, we have so many things which send out plastics to us on a daily basis. Today, the amount of plastics each one of us is using, I mean, if you just calculate, if you just collect plastic without disposing it off on a weekly basis, you'll realize how much waste we can make. Okay. Next slide. A zoom up of that image. So that's one of the shopping bags which we had. And this is part of that piece of art which we saw there. Next slide. So my question, I think let's go back to the previous slide. My question for all of you. Who is responsible for this? Who is we? Huh? We, you. But I have a specific person in mind. Designers. Because we design the world. Anything. Whether it's somebody who's designing a process, whether somebody is designing a product, whether it's somebody who's designing a house, we are responsible as designers to make the kind of impact we're doing. If we had earlier, when the first person who ever used plastic was Henry Ford for his cars, right? So he had an option of either using fossil fuels and creating plastic or to use soya bean to create plastic. he chose fossil fuels. Right? So that kind of, plastic is both a great boon for mankind. If we would not have progressed to the scale at which we are progressing right now, if not for plastic, we would not have spaceships, we would not have telephones, we would not have many of this in the way we use it right now. So plastic is both a boon and a bane for evolution of the humankind. But if we could have designed it in such a way, today we have bioplastics. Right? Today we have bioplastics as an answer. But if we had thought of it when we were designing it, we're still not too far away from doing, shifting back, but it's a tough journey backward to be an environmentally sensitive world, but we need to start working on it. Right, next slide. So I think as designers, we actually have more potential to slow environmental degradation than economists, politicians, and environmentalists. Designers can change the world. We don't have to say everything is dependent on political issues. If we have the intentions to make a difference, I would ask all of you to make that call and move towards being somebody who is more environmentally sensitive towards design. So how does nature do it? There are many rules. Can you go to the next slide? I take a lot of inspirations from Biomimicry Institute, which is a school of one of the first schools of design on biomimicry, founded by a lady called Jean Buenos, and out of which they've come out with certain rules on how nature works. But the ground rule on how nature works, because nature never creates waste, but the ground rule on how nature works is that life creates conditions which are conducive to life again. Which means that whenever nature creates something, it becomes conducive for life to happen again. Say a leaf falls, it becomes minerals, it becomes food for manure, it becomes food for microbes, various such things, and becomes a cyclical system again. So there are many ways on which nature works. Let's just look at how nature evolves to survive. It replicates strategies which work, it removes strategies which don't work, it integrates the unexpected at certain points of time, it reshuffles information, many such things. So there are many such life principles which nature really work with. So you can actually look at the source from the Biomimicry Institute, biomimicry 3.8.org, and get this data and start working on seeing how any of your designs can follow some of these principles at least, right? So thereby you're making a first step toward making that change. Next slide. Another two people who made a major difference is these two guys. I can't read the second names, so I'll keep it at Michael and William. Easier for me to spell it out. They came out with this idea of called cradle to cradle. Everything human beings do, we do it as a cradle to grave concept. What is cradle? The birth, right? And grave is death. But nature looks at cradle to cradle, which means that birth, and at the end of its life, it becomes birth for another process. At the end of its life, it becomes birth for another process. So is it possible for us to really look at this idea of cradle to cradle? These two guys came up with this idea of cradle to cradle, and they have a lovely book on cradle to cradle. It's called Cradle to Cradle. If you can get a copy of that and read it, it's an excellent book on how do you really look at trading systems which are more on cradle to cradle ideas. So some more idea. How much of waste are we creating? A banana peel might take a month to dispose, whereas a diaper or a sanitary pad might take anywhere between 600 to 700 years to dispose. So I think every material, if you really look at some of this, most of the materials we've ever created is still on the planet as the form in which we create. Right? We take every resource, whatever resource we have, we take it from any plant. Which plant do we take it from? Which plant do we take all our resources from? Huh? Which is that? Earth. So Elon Musk has not yet sent us to Mars. So all our products, whatever resources we want, whatever virgin materials we want, are taken out from planet Earth, right? And everything is converted into something which is finally becoming a grave, right? The two known objects to be seen from space, one is the Great Wall of China, man-made objects. The second one, which was a man-made object, was, now it's changed, but it was the landfill of Los Angeles. Los Angeles. But today they've changed that into something else. They've made that into a landscape. But our landfills are just growing multifold. So we are looking at almost around every person creating around 102 tons of waste on daily on either lifetime. Every person, even though we might weigh anywhere, from 30 kgs to 150 kgs, if I can take that, right? But we create almost around 110 tons of waste in our lifetime. So this is the way we work. We take all our raw materials from the planet, we consume it, we create, we design, process, manufacture, distribute, use. Some of it we repair, and most of it we dispose and send it out as waste back into the planet in which we are staying. And that's where we are getting the great respect plastic soup and things like that. So this is something which is critical. Have any of you heard of this word, the Earth Overshoot Day? Okay, it's a calculated day, the day on which we have finished consuming the resources specified for that particular year. Earth can also replenish. You are getting food. So if you plant a seed again, it gives us food again. Right? You're taking out minerals, you regenerate some part of the minerals. You're taking out water, it regenerates water. Right? It has a capacity to regenerate. It's like a bank. It's like a bank, right? So since we have in the city of businessmen, if I'm putting 100 rupees in the bank and the bank is giving me 2 rupees of interest per year, how much money can I use so that the principal amount cannot be changed? I know it's an afternoon, but if I'm putting 100 rupees in the bank and the bank is giving me 2 rupees of interest every year, how much money can I take out from that bank so that the principal amount of 100 rupees is always there? I can take only 2 rupees, right? So from 1985 onwards, I started taking 2 rupees per paisa. Which means that I've started over-consuming my interest amount, right? So as of 2023, on August 2nd, we finished that year's resources. And whatever we are consuming after August 2nd belong to the future generations. And we are mindlessly going in this direction. It's a big, big challenge. We are mindlessly going in this direction. It's a huge challenge for us. Right? So you can check out Global Footprint Network. You can map out your own footprint. You can study your own footprint as an architect. We were doing a little bit of exercise on the amount of waste we are generating in our construction industry. We are one of the biggest contributors of waste, but without really looking at waste of materials and all those things, how much of waste we are sending out from our construction site to a landfill. For a small 9 meters by 12 meters site, our contractors gave me a statistics of saying around 30 tractor loads of waste was being sent out. Which means that even if I put it as 1 ton per tractor load, I'm talking about 30 tons of waste which is going out on a small 9 meter by 12 meter site, which can be recycled. Right? So now, my office, we've taken up a stand and we've started segregating all the waste in our sites, saying that at least 80% of it is recycled rather than using your landfill. I would also ask all of you, if you are practicing, to start following that process. So with that, then it was around 1.44 Earth, but I think now we're almost around 1.7 Earth is what we require. The moment we reach June 30th as the date on which we finish this year's resources, we'll need 2 planets to sustain. If everybody starts living like an American, we need 7 planets to sustain. If everyone lives like an Indian, we need around 2.5 Earths to sustain. If everybody is willing to live like a Somalian, we might do around 0.85 planets to sustain. But I don't think we can live like a Somalian. Right? So how is it possible for us to change this whole equation? Next slide. So what we've done as an exercise was trying to look at design thinking. Hello, any of you have heard of design thinking as a methodology of solving problems? Design thinking was the Stanford methodology of looking at how designers can be given a problem and they come out with, each person in the room can come out with various solutions to the same. Whereas for an engineer who looks at the statistic data sheet and is based on rules and regulations, everybody comes out with some one solution. Like mathematics for designers are different, no? 1 plus 1 is never 1, 2 for a designer. 1 plus 1 is 11, whatever, right? Or two towers or whatever. So they started looking at identifying how we work on design and came out with a 5-step process of empathy, defining a problem statement, then going into ideations, and then prototyping, and then testing. Empathy could be site analysis, just to make you easier to understand. Site analysis, understanding the topography, understanding where locations are, all this stuff. Defining what you want to solve, coming out with your problem statement. Then ideation is coming out with your own design solutions, and then doing a drawing, testing, changing, and then going back and redefining some of this. So we kind of added a couple of more entities into this and see how we can really learn from nature. So you, along with this, you go into inquiry and asking nature the right kind of questions on how nature can help you solve that particular problem. And nature can throw some amazing animals and organisms which is solving similar kind of problems. I'll give you a couple of websites on which you can study those. And once you get those different ways of solving problems, you build a whole design matrix and say, I can learn from a squirrel like this, I can learn from an elephant like this, I can learn from a mushroom to do a particular activity, and then build a whole design matrix of inspiration for it. And then get into ideation, which can make your design solutions much better. Right? So some examples. I think some of you, whoever has gone through biomimicry before would know this. This is the bullet train. The earlier bullet train was much stunted. It didn't have a pointed beak. It had a stunted face. And the bullet train was generally done in Japan. Right? Japan is a very narrow country, so you had to go through a lot of mountains, tunnels, and things like that. So whenever it was going through tunnels, you're hitting a huge barrier of air, a wall of air. So you create something called a sonic boom, and it cuts down the speed of the train. Right? So the designer of the train then started looking at the kingfisher. The kingfisher is known as the king of fishing because when it puts its beak into the water, it does not create any ripples. It does not allow for any ripples to form. So it can fish the right fish and come out. It does not disturb the fish underwater. Right? They looked at it and then reintegrated that into the nose of a bullet train, thereby piercing through the density of air inside the tunnels and not reducing their speed and not creating that kind of sound. There were 2 other animals they learned from and integrated that into this. One was the belly of the penguin into the design of this into the bullet train, and the other one was understanding acoustics by learning from the feathers of an owl and integrating that into a bullet train. Next slide. Another great example has been shark-like technologies. Sharks, even though because of its size, does not have bacteria growing on them. Whereas if you look at whales and more of the bigger fishes, even though shark is a big animal, it does not have bacteria growing around them. It is because when you zoom in at the nano level, this is how each cell works. So they kind of looked at redesigning textiles for one and integrating that into swimming wear. And I think the first time it was worn was by Michael Phillip in Australian Games, Olympic Games, where he won almost 10 gold medals. One of the biggest hauls in one big history. The other case study which was done was integrating that into paints, the way paints were done. Right? If you look at a lot of hospitals, hospital deaths majorly in a surgery happens not because of this failure of the surgery, but because of infections. So for you to create clean 1,000 rooms, you need to have walls which does not allow bacteria to grow, right? So they started looking at that and recreated even some paints for such industries. Next slide. This is a great story we've seen on how, if you remember, I don't know how many of you have seen the old computer screens, the cobalt computer screens, cobalt tube. It was almost this thick, right? Which had a different ways of throwing imagery on the screen, right? They started looking at butterfly wings, peacocks. Have you seen how when a peacock moves, it could be green at one point of time and the same place becomes blue at another point of time, right? So it is not pigmented. It is based on something called structured color. It is how light gets reflected back. And they integrated now into most of the screens. So for example, today you see the screen, this is hardly what? 3 mm or 4 mm. And today you have films on which you can get displayed out. Again, some things integrated from learning from nature. There are many more which are looking at materials in architecture. There are materials which are looking at chemistry from nature, right? So you have, I forgot the lady's name. Please look it up on the MIT's material lab. There's another architect lady who's been working a lot with algae as a building material.
Mary Oxman. She's Mary Oxman.
Yes, Mary Oxman. So she is doing a lot of work with chemical materials, which decomposes after a particular period of time. I mean, somebody was asking me, what should be the age of a building? I would be happy if I can design a building which can die after its usage after 30 years and becomes part of a cyclical system. Can we even start thinking on things like that? Something we will look, this is a project which we are working on. I just wanted to see how we can integrate that into architecture also. This is a project which we are working on for a kindergarten space, and we started looking at how the golden ratio works and started looking at the shell structure, and then broke it down into a process where you could slice them and get another XY coordinate and connect it on that curve. Say for example this curve to that curve and that curve. So you create a series of fragmented shells, and we could span almost 35 feet with a 1-inch thick concrete. So our material consumption became much lesser when compared to a regular structure. Right? And since it was also a kindergarten school, we went on to a metaphor. It was a playful element. We went on to a metaphor of an egg hatching, right? And so when the egg hatches, the kind of light which flows inside, and kindergarten is something which is similar to it. So we said, can these planes become something which can allow light to come in? And this whole thing is designed in such a way that I can just cut these two sections, move the whole panel to another place and rebuild it. Right? Next slide. Of course, the children now really enjoy the space. There's a huge area for them to run around, play around. This, I don't know if you have images of this building. This is another building which we built next to it, which is a school again. But one of the simple questions which we asked is, if nature is not transferring load on a 90 degrees, why should my column and beam be on a 90 degrees? And we started integrating and exploring various geometries on how we can bend the columns and start looking at it. So we inclined the columns, the ground floor inward and the upper floor outward, and tied it up on the center line so that the CG is maintained. And we could reduce steel consumption by almost 30% of steel by just doing this shift of moving a column inward and outward. Right? It might not be the best solution, but it's an attempt of moving forward. Again, this whole building, which is almost 12,000 square feet of area, can be shifted almost 6 times, because this was on a leased land, and we didn't want that the building should become another landfill at the end of its lease period. So we've designed it in such a way that at least 70 to 80% of the material can be salvaged and reused for another structure. That's how this whole building is designed. Another experiment with triangulations in nature, I think you looked at, you were telling me about hexagons. Somebody was talking to me about hexagons. So you looked at that geometry and broke it down into a series of triangles, and we looked at the way weaving happens in nature and how that brings in a lot of stability towards architecture, right? So we could build a ground floor plus 1 floor structure using just a 2-inch by 4-inch section. And the way that 2-inch by 4-inch section starts weaving together and becomes and uses the geometry of the airframe, which is one of the most common geometries you find in nature. And literally everything other than the basement, and the foundations are again at those junction points only. Other than that, everything else can be recycled. Everything can be reused for another process at the end of the day. So many such questions can happen when you start looking at how nature can help us solve problems. As architects, you can start asking the right kind of questions on how can nature help us transmit loads? How can nature help us distribute resources? How can nature help us redesign a hinge? Right? So you can start asking nature various such questions. And one lovely website on which you can find answers is something which the Biomimicry Institute has put up, which is called asknature.org. Okay, you just go there and shoot out and say, how does nature do something like this? And it comes out with various organisms which has done similar problems which are being solved. But you need to ask the right kind of question. You can't ask how does nature handle hinge, but how does nature move along an axis? And it is able to give you a much better answer. And today AI, of course, will give you a lot of answers for similar things. Right? That's one lovely website. And since all of us, I don't know ABC of nature. I don't know anything of any organism. I'm not a naturalist. I assume a lot of you are not naturalists. Right? So you don't know about a lot of organisms. But if you start going to these zones, these websites and asking and knowing more about one particular thing, there's another website called onezoom.org or com, I don't know, onezoom.org or com. But it's a lovely website which has mapped all organisms on the planet and leads you to a Wikipedia page on that particular organism where you can go much deeper into how it functions and papers on that and things like that. It's another lovely website which we have. So you can start looking at how nature can help us solve various challenges. Next slide, please. These are some questions which we put across to some of our workshop participants, and this becomes an activity for them to really work on. And they start looking at studying more about ants and the whole idea of optimization and see where we can use this ants philosophy for optimization and things like that. So one of the algorithms presently used in the software world is ants algorithms. We are now looking at echolations on dolphins and bats being used in the way cars communicate with each other. Rather than sending a communication across the space and then coming back to another car, can I start communicating between two cars directly by using echolations and things like that? Those are things which are happening. Next slide. We've done a lot of elective programs for schools of design, but I'll just show you one such. I think we have one or two examples of what we did. We did go through the 7-step process of empathize, define, ask nature the right kind of questions, building the design matrix, ideate, prototype, and testing. So this was one of the presentations. Next slide. So we just gave one organism called the tree hopper, and the kids started really looking at how this works. So for example, if you just look at the eye, if you look at the size of the tree hopper, that's your size of the tree hopper. That's your fingernail and that's the size of the. But if you look at the eye, how are they designed to look at 360 degrees? And people came up with ideas of redesigning CCTVs, redesigning hinges, using just the height and how that geometry works, and things like that. Right? I'm just giving you examples here. So here, this was part of a studio where they wanted to design toilets and wanted to see if biomimicry can help them redesign toilets. Right? So one of the questions, problem statement was for women when they are traveling, they don't find comfortable, safe places for them to. So it was an idea of how does nature maintain community and coordination, how does nature self-replicate. They created a lot of questions and started finding out how nature works, right? So how does nature move on liquids? So this was on a floating toilet in a flood affected area. So they studied gravies, the fronts, and such. So they studied about form, strategy in nature, and process in nature, and saw how it does, and created single line drawings, and then integrated that into a design solution. So this was about building a design matrix, right? Say for example, honeycombs for questioning how does nature adapt, optimize the space and materials. How does nature maintain hygiene? They looked at a spider, they looked at an African cloud frog, and various such things where they could learn. I mean, none of them knew any of these words before they started this workshop. Right? And it was a 3-day workshop or something like that. Next slide. And then they came out with solutions, ideas on how they could use those thought processes into the design. Next slide. Some more studies and some idea of a design which came out. But this is just iterations. Right now it's, since I told you, we're just working on building an awareness about what's possible in nature. You can come out with solutions like this which can make a difference to the way we will start looking at it. I think I'm almost done here. Great. So I think do we all accept that nature is, by pure time, pure sense of time, is a great master for us, a great mentor for us to really learn and integrate that into design, problem solving. I think that's where the intention of this class has been, or this master session has been. Yeah, that's what it is. I've been lucky enough to have finished my master course on biomimicry education, where we do a lot of workshops, where we do a lot of awareness programs, where we have a small tribe of people who are from various fields. We come get together and interact. There's a lot of challenges which we put across. So for example, next month we are working on a challenge on understanding Fibonacci series in nature and integrating that into our design solution. Another month we will be doing a project on color red in nature and learning about the red in nature and how we can integrate that into design solutions. So this is the intention of the NCT. Next slide. If anyone wants to be a part of this, please do use this QR code to join us and be a part of this journey. You can use this because it's a paid thing, but you can use this so it becomes free for you. There is a set of courses which I put up on the Bridgman course where you can just all get that for it. We're not charging it for it. Great. Any questions? Or even thoughts? Rather than questions, any thoughts?
I saw a great presentation for the education of nature, and also an architect who's nature inspired. But how did you manage to do the school? What budget was like? Challenge is the budget basically. Is it expensive? Gets expensive, or what is it with the conventional method of doing design? Or clients always look at the budget first, then they go for all these things. How did you manage?
We are very, very sensitive to cost. and we don't want to spend anything which is too heavy for that particular project. So if you have taken a call, it will also be based on cost. Say, if I'm just telling you for doing the same kind of a space, I'm using 6 inches of concrete versus 1 inch of concrete. I've made a difference in that cost. Right? So definitely we brought in value into that space.
When you're studying biomimicry, does the project come first, or do you first create like this bank of phenomena that you understand and then you apply?
Okay, there are two approaches towards biomimicry. One is called biology to design, where you took, say for example, I talked about the tree hopper, where you looked at an organism, you studied the organism, you found various very interesting elements from there, and then said, what is it I can learn from that and integrate that into design? So that is something which we call as biology to design. The second one, which is more about toilet design, is a design to biology, where you have a design problem to solve, and then you find out organisms which you have to learn. Right? So you do have both the kind of processes, and with various groups we explore this both activities. Sometimes we take up a biology to design activity, sometimes design to biology.
I want to say that as an architect, the first year of all architects, I think we have a course on basics of design, which is basically you take something from nature and then you create some abstraction, then you make for example some sort of covering or shelter with that abstraction. My question is that used to be for us. It used to be very open-ended. How do you convince clients to make a building that is very different from conventional architecture?
So that's been a question for
The
me.
form, or how the building is going to look.
Yeah, that's been a question for me for a long time. But look, today, because of 25 years of practice, most of them come to us because we do such kind of business. Right? That's the best answer I could give you right now. But definitely, I think if you're so strong on your convictions on the way you want to get your philosophy across, you definitely can put it across to anybody. But it's not just biomimicry. We do a lot of environmentally sensitive. Not all our buildings are biomimicry inspired, right? But we do a lot of buildings which are sensitive to nature. I don't know if you've heard of filler slabs. Right? We do filler slabs with all kinds of junk being used in filler. Right? We've used glass bottles. We've used washing machine parts to be a part of the filler slab. It's possible. And today, we are also looking at now integrating FRP reinforcements, which can cut down the steel consumption by almost 60%. And changing the way we look at that steel. Because the quality of that reinforcement is very different. It is not like steel, it's not rigid like steel. I can deform it and make it any geometry. So the moment I fold it, it multiplies and slowly itself. So we are changing all that, and we convince them. Of course, we talk to them.
But so during the start of you suggesting this to clients, how would you convince them that this is the right approach, or whether this would be better in the long run?
I think, okay, one thing I've realized, people don't buy eco-friendliness. People buy lifestyles. How many of you like to go to Fabrinia and buy a cloth there? A lot of us, right? We like to go because it's a big brand, it's a nice brand. But the underlying fact of that is it also works with women groups, it also works with Kali, it also works with various such local crafts. So you build a brand. You don't sell sustainability to them. You sell something else to them, and sustainability becomes a back package. It's possible. Say for example, we are right now we're getting into another model in our own practice where we want to see how can I build by making a larger impact. How can I build 1,000 homes a year rather than the 10 or 12 homes I'm building right now? How can I build 1,000 homes a year so that 1,000 homes becomes environmentally sensitive? But I'm not selling sustainability there at all. I'm selling something else and working on getting that 1,000 homes in place.
So, your idea being sustainability, you're selling something else so that sustainability
Yeah,
comes
it becomes a brand. So, for example, in Bangalore, especially, if somebody says okay, there's a building being designed by Kham Design or any of these firms, they get to know they get a certain quality of space, but they don't know it's also sustainable in some sense, environmentally sensitive in some sense.
Hello, sir. So my research thesis is based on biophilic architecture. So that basically involves using several natural elements in nature-based solutions inside the built environment. So can you help me understand how is biophilic architecture different from biomimicry?
Biomimicry is about mimicking the ethos of an organism, of a structure. Say, for example, you're learning either the form, you're learning either the structure, or you are learning about the system organism uses to survive and integrating that to solve your problems. That is biomimicry. Biophilic is about adding elements which is more related to the mind. So, having a plant inside a room makes a difference, right? But it does not add any other character into that space. Using a stone wall adds a particular mindset. That somewhere is biophilic, right? Where you add natural elements to your built form, and thereby, making a different kind of a space for a person to use. And Indians were masters of it. Thank you, everyone. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you.